All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. Everybody found your name tags. Sure. I'm going to watch. There's a couple people that might come late, so we'll watch for them. I'm going to start with, since we can't all see each other perfectly, going around and just say your name. Chandra, we'll start with you.
You already did. Chandra.
I'm Ann. I'm Jane.
Leslie.
Todd.
Cher. Trisha.
Renee.
Karen.
And I'm Tracy. You might not be able to see me much. Linda, say that again so you pop on screen.
Linda.
There she is. Sue, can you say something? Jamie?
Hi.
I know it's kind of weird because I'm calling on you, so you already know her name. Diane, are you able to say anything?
Diane.
Hi, Diane. Thanks for being here. Did I get everybody?
Great news.
There we go.
Karen, you be careful there.
Well, we're going to jump right into our discussion of American Dirt, much like the author did when she jumped right into the story. It begins rather violently. How did that work for you? Did that turn you off? Did it draw you in? Did it feel appropriate to set the tone of the story?
I think if anyone knows anything about the cartel, it probably wasn't incredibly shocking. I mean, it is shocking, but it's, I mean, it isn't anything that I would not put past the cartel.
But it's just not cartel though, because having been in Mexico, there was a lot of bandits that were always there, even when I went down to Mexico quite a bit. So they could have done something like this just as easily. So I wasn't surprised. I mean, it was
I thought
not,
it just set the tone. That was where she was heading, to try to bring you along into the sense of fear that was going to be every step of the way.
I feel like they were setting up for a movie too. Didn't it feel like this is gonna be a movie? This is how you would start a movie?
yes.
Mhm.
Really right in?
Right. Get that big scene right out of the way. Yes, yes. Not out of the way, but right away. Online people, any thoughts on how it began so violently?
It's like the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, you know, like you all said, it sets the tone for the rest of the movie.
Joining. Okay. Somebody else coming in here. Forgive me, it's a little challenging to run both, so if I miss anything, just speak up.
We all know how our teachers.
Right?
Right?
What about the title? American Dirt. Does that signify anything? I'm always wondering about the title, so I like to ask those kind of questions.
I just thought it meant, you know, that's what they were reaching for, to be on American dirt. You know, I didn't really give it a lot of thought, but that was my initial thought, and then I didn't think about it.
My initial thought was exactly the opposite. I thought they were going to give us the dirt on being an American.
Oh,
I really did. I thought it was going to be, this is how awful it is. And I was delighted that that wasn't what it was, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, whenever you think about, give me the dirt on
Yes.
somebody. Yeah, I know this. I don't know that I really like this title for her book particularly.
And I didn't see any much written about how she came to know that. I didn't see anything written about that.
Dirt.
I know that some authors will tell you, I don't know, Tracy may know, what the percentage is. Generally speaking, the title, more likely than not, is not picked by
Somebody
the
else,
author,
right.
it's picked by the publishing
Right,
company.
exactly.
Their whole cadre of people, and they figure out what they're gonna call it to make it catchy, to make it better. The author
True,
has
yeah.
nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and I know nothing about what percentages, but it would be interesting to know, like some of the well-known books, what was the author's original title?
Right.
You know, what was their
Yeah.
their
And
thought?
usually you find it somewhere though in the book, you know, somewhere written, the title jumps out at you after you've read it, but I don't remember With American dirt.
You're right.
Well, it did in a small way, since as I said, I'm always looking for why they titled it this. When they're at the border, but they're waiting to go out into the desert, Soledad sticks her hand through the fence and wiggles her finger on the other side. Her fingers are in El Norte. She spits through the fence only to leave a piece of the shelf there in American dirt.
There you go. It was in there.
Diane, we're getting some feedback here. I'm gonna see if I can mute you, but feel free to unmute yourself and chat anytime. And if you read the author's notes, were you aware of it? What she says where she had to kind of strike the word American from her vocabulary.
All right.
Oh,
No, I didn't read that. Tell me that.
Mhm. She says, one thing I had to learn while doing research for this book was to strangle the word American out of my own vocabulary. Elsewhere in the Western Hemisphere, there's such exasperation that the United States has co-opted that word, when in fact the American continents contain multitudes of cultures and people who consider themselves American.
Yeah,
Central,
sure. A Honduran is an American, a Guatemalan is an American, but yeah.
Mhm.
So she is as studied something, I don't remember. the-
Yes.
Thought us would need a census.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which is basically is United Statesian
yeah.
Right.
if it was
Right.
translated directly, which sounds weird to us, but.
Yes.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with the title, but it's certainly interesting to think about as you're reading and how we are so,
It's all American.
right? Right?
But
Uh-huh.
I personally took it to mean US in the title's meaning, and I thought it was like an equivalent phrase to the promised land. So, you know, you get your foot on American dirt,
Right.
Mhm.
That's right.
kind of the promised land.
Mhm, mhm.
But why does she use the word dirt? I mean, normally you'd see American soil. You know what I mean? It's like she wanted the sort of the shock value, or the publishers did, someone.
Mhm, mhm. I think there was one scene too where Lucas, the little boy, kind of mentions that it looks the same. The dirt is the same from where he was to where they're going, and it's just he expected it to be different, and it was all the same.
Yeah. And they just
Man-
crossed over and said
man-made
it's like the
title,
crappiest road in Mexico. That's what they were on, and they were in America, or they were in the United States. You know,
mhm.
crappiest road in Mexico is the same way.
Mhm. Do you think after Lydia's whole family was murdered, she had other choices than what she did?
Didn't seem like not
I don't think
long
so.
term.
Not long term, sure. I would agree with that.
And not in Mexico.
She couldn't trust anyone.
I mean, she didn't want to be owned by his name.
Javier.
And she wouldn't have.
Mhm.
She stayed. He had control and power.
And informants and power everywhere, it seemed. I'm reaching all the way up to the border, the cartels working together, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's tough.
I don't know if it's true. Somebody told me today. She asked what we were reading. I told her, and we talked a little bit about it. She told me today that now even the cartels have control over the avocado industry.
Oh,
I
really?
was amazed. Yes,
Probably.
I mean, so they got their fingers in.
It's kind of like a mafia.
What was it like the month?
Mhm.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, they're exactly the same.
So do I feel guilty if I buy avocados now?
No, but she didn't want to be part of any of that kind of,
Right,
so I don't know
right.
if she had to be another option.
Oh, gosh.
Did anybody watch Ozark?
Yes.
Well, I did.
I
Right.
know, talk about
Violence.
talk about control though.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's money laundering, but it's cartel money that there's, anyway. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I'm waiting for it
I know, we are too. It's violence like. you
Every
speak
one of
in
the
line.
lawyers' brains out, it was like, okay.
Oh, my
okay.
gosh, yes, yes, they did.
Yeah, there's the shock value.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
The cartels are very far reaching, even here into Door County, believe it or not. Come up on their yachts from Chicago and sell drugs right off the yacht, the big expensive yacht.
It's a little scary to think about.
Yeah, it is.
Where did you learn that, Jamie?
Yeah.
From somebody who worked with the sheriff's department. I cannot remember who it was now, but years ago they told me about it.
I had a student, well, more than one student at sabbatical, and one day, and he was relatively new, but his English was, impeccable. He was just a marvelous, marvelous kid, and I'm sure he was undocumented. But that didn't matter to me. But anyway, we're looking at Google Maps, and he's showing me his little village, and then he says, and that's the cartel.
Mm.
I mean, he knew this is a 14-year-old young man who knows exactly what's happening to his country and knows exactly where the cartel is and where not to go. And of course, no, I haven't seen him since I left school, but I hope he's doing well up here and away from all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's frightening. So I don't know how much they follow their, their undocumented people, there's a cartel. I don't know how much they control of that either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very possible they're coming up here to George County. I don't know.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I find myself physically exhausted. I mean, I went on that journey. My heart just is heavy. My body is exhausted. I mean, I kind of listened to it all in just a few days. It's incredible. Did you all have that experience? Was it just a grueling journey for you physically as well as mentally?
I've been dead days, long time. I would have fallen off the train. I would have never caught the train.
yeah. Right.
I
And as a parent, I think really hard too to
Oh, yeah.
digest. You do anything for your child too, and then to see these other kids along the way with nobody making this journey.
Mm-hmm.
I found it interesting that the cell phone was the key in tracking where everybody was. And everybody has cell phones. So that just, I thought, oh, that is just terrible.
Did you realize everybody knows where you are if you open up your cell phone? That's, I mean, all of us, they can
Everybody
track.
would know. that we
Even
were
if you're
here.
down,
Right.
they know.
Yeah.
Yes.
He knows.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
we can do that.
Yeah.
Big Brother is right.
Can't you turn that off? Can't you turn that off? That they wouldn't know where you are?
No.
You have to take something out of
You
the
have to take
phone.
this
Yeah.
card
You
out,
have to take this in part.
According to detective shows on.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
You can turn off your location, but I don't think that completely does it.
No.
The author did such a great job of introducing so many different characters on this journey. So many different backgrounds and reasons that they were there, so that you couldn't make a stereotypical image of these people if your life depended on it. There'd be absolutely no way. Such a good job of doing that.
That's,
I
know.
said,
That's
the
right.
Latinx people will not agree with you.
That's right.
Yeah, I felt like none of the characters were genuine in this book.
But I agree with Jamie. I think, and that was one of the criticisms was that she wrote about, made them stereotypical. And I didn't think so either. She chose to write a particular story with particular kind of people. And it doesn't mean that everybody in Mexico is like those people.
Right.
And I didn't understand the criticism of stereotypical. She wasn't saying everybody was like that, but she did have these particular characters. Yeah.
But the
agree,
one
Jamie.
you had us look up, there was Esmeralda, and I've forgotten, she's a Los Angeles
Right.
Times
Right.
journalist,
Yeah.
and she really trashed it.
Oh,
And she said that Lydia was a totally unbelievable character, that just wouldn't, she would not, that would not have happened to a, what she called her, a middle class.
Yeah, so, and that's, I was trying to find more from the LA Times gal
Mhm.
to find out why she was so angry.
Right,
Because for me, this is not that much, I mean, these are characters.
right.
Believable.
And it's believable, exactly. And I couldn't understand why she was really
She was
nasty.
adamant about it.
I know.
Yeah.
Angry.
Mhm. And that was kind of hard to read her review of it.
Well, that's right. And then Sandra Cisneros then
Mhm.
will support this one.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, which she's got a blurb on the back and she still stands by that. Yeah, yeah. So,
I think the only thing that I wondered how believable it was the boyfriend, Javier. I mean,
It wasn't a boyfriend.
No.
well,
They were
No.
simpatico though, because
Right.
they shared in, like, he had.
shared.
But they shared the love of language.
yeah.
But he committed, she never committed to him, which
Right.
he, I don't think ever realized. That's why he wasn't gonna let her go.
Well, he had three people. He had his wife, he had his mistress, and then he had her.
Yeah.
You know, so they each
And
had a
his
different
daughter- and
slot.
his daughter.
And
his
Scott,
daughter,
yeah, yeah. So
right.
everybody was in a little niche that they were fitting
Yeah.
into his life.
Exactly what he needed.
That's right.
And I think it was just by chance. Bookstore.
No, nothing's. She was already paying protection. He just wanted to go in and see what was going on.
Well, that's true, but she wasn't paying it directly to him.
No,
Why would he
No,
do it?
no.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. He went in because it was a bookstore, but I don't know that he ever thought he was going to.
Yeah.
That's very.
But unless, do you think he knew her husband was a journalist?
I wondered.
Oh, that
that
was
too.
true.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought he knew who was gonna write, who was writing about
But
him.
then it didn't seem like
Yeah,
it, so.
no.
Mhm, mhm.
She didn't dwell on it so much, but that certainly would have been a
Or he
possibility.
didn't drop any hints about it in the, what we were able to read. He wasn't looking for clues or anything like that either, so I don't think maybe he was.
But if he had people working for him, all they had to do was follow the rules
Mhm.
and say,
Sure.
here's where she lives and guess who she lives with.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he didn't know.
Well, I think he knew a whole lot about her.
Yeah.
We can make it up even though.
Right? It's fiction anyway, right? So how did you feel? You get to know this charming, intelligent man, and then you realize who he is? Oh.
He doesn't know what I do. Why do you think we moved up here?
Yeah, it is disappointing.
Do you have a big boat?
Yeah.
I do it a different way.
You do have a little one. That's obvious, right? You go to the Marine
On
Corps,
a
it's no
rowboat, right?
problem.
Yeah, right. No,
Well, think about women who, a man who has two wives in totally different areas and they know nothing about each other. I mean, I think these things can happen all the time, that people play two roles and hoodwink whoever they're.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an interesting question though, because when she learned who he was, she didn't say, oh my gosh, we've got to, write this off. And in fact, her husband said, is there going to be a problem? And she said, yeah. there won't be a problem."
Could she do anything?
Yeah, but I would be,
Oh, but you
if
couldn't.
I had, the minute I learned, I think I'd be panic stricken. And, we gotta get out of here.
Out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when her husband wrote the article and had the poem in there, which she says, she didn't evidently give, the daughter had
Right.
submitted it.
Right.
But why did she not think it would be a big deal? Why did she, when her husband said,
Yeah.
you think we should
Yes,
leave town for a bit? She goes, no, I don't think there's any problem.
Yeah. So that was kind of.
Miscalculation.
Did you understand the
Well,
sequence there?
And that
We
makes
had-
it the story, right? I mean,
You're right.
that's the whole way to make it run.
Because the daughter submitted this thing, then she killed herself, but supposedly she killed herself because of reading this article.
Right.
So I got a little confused as to how this fit together.
She didn't realize what he was. So she was interested in this Then read the article.
And then read the article. So I think that the wife,
Yeah.
that Lydia was correct, but for the fact that the daughter killed herself, it wouldn't have been a. See, as they were discussing the article, they thought,
Yeah.
oh, he'd find complimentary, as a matter of fact.
Lydia didn't realize that the daughter didn't know at all what her father was. Never occurred to her that her daughter didn't know. And he seemed to like the article as it was. The only thing is they got to the daughter. So that was the thing. I was thinking about, why the critics didn't like that character, but it's like, you drop the frog in the water, boiling water, it screams, but if you drop it in one toe at a time, little by little, you just become inured to everything around you. I mean, we've done that in this culture too, what we're accepting as rational behavior from our government over these last 5-6 years. I mean, it's just nuts what we're accepting now. We would never have stood for it 10-15 years ago. So you just take a breath and you get used to it and you hope for whatever little good you can get out of the horrible situation. And I kind of identified with her in that way. I don't think our society is that much better. I'm sorry to be so pessimistic.
The fact that she was already paying protection.
Yeah.
Like they accepted paying protection
Yep.
as did her other shopkeepers.
Which for us here is probably hard to think about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What
And
are you doing with the
Here, I think, to the mob, pay protection.
Well, or
money,
even
right?
in Chinatown, like in Chinatown in San Francisco, some of those, there are gangs in Chinatown that people pay.
Yeah.
It's not unusual.
What I found interesting was, I personally loved the book, but I was like, book is obviously written for me, a white person living in America who goes to Mexico once a year for a month and stays in a resort and goes out and goes to towns and stuff. But I'm like, totally oblivious, right, to everything. So I really enjoyed it. And I was shocked that these people were so vehemently against it until I sort of started looking into why. And then I said, oh, okay, I get it. They've been trying to voice this and bring it up, but they can't sell their books to the publishers because for whatever reason.
Well,
And
I
this
think,
one, for whatever reason, got picked up.
I think that's the root of all,
Yeah.
the root, and there may be other, of all this criticism.
Exactly.
It's the publishers
Exactly.
who have not made enough effort
It's
to reach out
publishers
and
and
highlight
the people like Oprah, the
Latinx,
people that are promoting.
authors
Exactly.
and do more to get them recognized.
Yeah.
And so they revolted on this particular, because the woman got a 7-figure.
Exactly. And they're like, oh, another rich white woman.
And they're
gets
making-
money on all of
our-
the migrant
And they're
people.
making
Our
$5,000
problems. Our
on their
problems.
book, and that's it. Yeah.
I was telling Tracy that this is the first Oprah book that I read in about 20 years.
Yeah.
Because some of them, they were so, I mean, they were good books, they were written well, but you felt like you've been kicked in the set, like,
Yeah.
and I thought I can't do this to myself anymore. So I hadn't read one in a long time.
Yeah.
And then when I saw The American Dirt, I thought, okay, now we're going to get kicked in the head. And indeed, we weren't kicked in the head.
Yeah.
It was a different angle for it to come from. But I do think it was really well written, and I don't
Yeah.
regret having read it,
Right.
certainly.
I agree with you totally. In fact, I was gonna read it off. This
Me
is an
neither.
Oprah book and I'm like, I don't read it.
I don't either. I
And
don't.
Renee says, you're not reading it.
And we all learned, and if you didn't know them before, you all learned a lot of Mexican or Spanish swear words, right?
That's right.
You all, when you can all go chingado now, right? When you want to go, oh shit, chingado.
But now mine doesn't say Oprah book. Trish's copy says, oh,
Yeah, mine did too. Mine did.
I had no idea.
You
it
must
was
have a
an
first
book.
edition before it was chosen.
Yeah.
So before you read it, did you know much about the controversy and the criticism surrounding it?
No, nothing.
No.
And so
And I read it a
almost
long
didn't
time
read
ago. Long time ago, like beginning of COVID, probably like April, May, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
it was
So when I clicked on your
You
articles,
recommended it.
yeah, when I clicked on the articles, I was like, oh, wow.
January.
Because I've been recommending it for forever. I mean, it's
Mhm.
a moving book.
It's interesting because I almost didn't read it because I knew of this controversy. I thought, well, I'm gonna read a different book. I'm gonna go find another Latinx author and read that one.
Mhm.
And then I thought, well, maybe I should give it.
Well, did you find
Well, there are lists. I mean, people have created
but
lists.
you haven't read one yet? I'm curious.
I
That
have-
would be a good book.
Well, that
to
one,
say.
right?
Yeah.
This
I-
one has.
Suggest one, Tracy?
I have a couple, Jane did suggest this last time.
So I had read that about 10 years ago.
Oh, Enrique's
And it's
journey.
nonfiction, and it's
Enrique's
about
journey.
a single
I don't know if you can see
boy,
it.
like someone said, on his own, on the Vista, getting up to the United States.
Okay.
Jane Whitney suggested that, or didn't Jane Whitney suggest that book, or was
No.
it was yours?
Yeah.
But it's not written as well, I don't think.
I don't know, I read it 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And what's the second book?
And then this is one I was going to recommend. It's also nonfiction, about, it's specifically
yeah.
about
Yes.
people traveling through the desert. And I believe it's a group of like 26 men that try to cross the border in the desert, and only 12 of them survive. So
That's
it's
not the one about the people.
Devil's Highway. If anybody can see it, Devil's Highway.
Perfume and all this to survive in the desert in Arizona. Because when I was in graduate school in Arizona, that happened, something like that. There were a number
Oh.
of people that crossed the border in the desert. They ran out of water. They started drinking whatever they could get that was liquid. Is that?
I don't remember perfume, but maybe it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was reading American Dirt and they came to where they had to cross the desert, I'm like, there's not enough pages left because it's a big deal to cross the desert. I was like, it's no wonder. So yeah, those are both nonfiction, and I think some of us recommend them to.
Which one are you gonna read? The Devil's
Devil's
Highway?
Yeah, and he's a Luis Alberto Oria. I'm not good at pronunciations, but he's an excellent writer. So
Yeah.
Because she did one of.
Did she use
And
him?
he did the House of Broken Angels?
Yes,
Have you read that one
so.
yet?
I have not.
Yeah.
No, I think this one says what it
Yeah, that would be interesting, just to see if it coincided with when I was in graduate school in Arizona.
Mhm.
Can I just break in for a minute? I just wanted to say that with all the controversy, and I watched some panel discussions with Latinx people from all different organizations, and listen to all the criticism. But at the end of the day, if us clueless white people who don't know anything about this situation have more empathy and sympathy for the migrant situation and immigration reform and all of that, I would think that would be a good thing for every group.
Right, maybe we need the politicians to read this.
There you go.
And she did do 5 years research, and I think that, I don't know that I remember much of anything that didn't sound realistic as to things that really probably have happened, that she incorporated into that story.
But she also used this gal from San Diego State.
From where?
San Diego State,
Oh,
who was department chair of the Chicano Studies. And so that would have been very useful as well.
I didn't
Plus,
think
I think she-
the
Saying
character of that deported American woman whose daughter was a dreamer, I didn't think she was very plausible to me.
Why? Because she was so well dressed?
She just didn't seem that upset enough,
Yeah.
Start with an M.
Marisol.
yeah, I remember.
Yeah, she spoke perfect English and came here legally. She was a homemaker and a medical professional. 10 year into that person.
We do that. We do that. I know. I mean, in the past 5 years, it's gotten really bad with ICE, right? I mean, it's just like everyone's living, well, isn't that part of the dream, the dreamers argument and their whole
Right.
reason?
My daughter-in-law teaches at a school in Utah for refugees and immigrants, and some are documented, some are not. But she tells stories of ICE agents going to bus stops in the morning where fathers and mothers are waiting for the bus with their children to get on the bus, and they round them up at bus stops.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Well, because my guess is if they've got statistics, they've got quotas to keep up with, and these are the easiest people to pick up.
Yeah.
Rather than going after maybe criminals who violated our laws.
I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but it was a very well-written book by the same woman. Oh, gosh. I'll think of her name in a minute, but in one of the chapters, and this was 15 years ago, she described how hard it was to come to this country legally. And the process of, the 7 years on waiting lists and the numerous interviews and the money that's, and that's the big complaint for, all people, if they want to come, they should come legally, but it is literally impossible to come.
Well, and that's true. I mean, I had several Chinese people that worked for me.
Okay.
And they got so frustrated with even the company trying to do something. They went out and spent thousands and thousands of dollars to find a lawyer that would get them a green card much, much faster. I mean, it's almost impossible to do this legally. It's almost
And
impossible.
then once you have the green card to take the next step, I mean.
Then it could be 15 years before you're a true citizen of America, even though you've done everything that the rest of us have done as well. It was very frustrating. I had several people that were beside themselves in terms of trying to get a green card.
Well, I think we're broken. What do we fix first?
Oh, yes. So it seemed like the author very purposely picked a middle-class woman. How would it have been different had she not? Like what was she trying to say there?
She would never have had the money. The border people took from her and then she paid the coyote, and that's whose story I really liked. Was the coyote guy. That was
interesting.
The fact that he had never planned on doing it and he just kind of went to visit, and then all of a sudden
that was one major thing I learned that I probably didn't know, is all the money that passes hands, even to police, even to people who are supposed to be keeping the law.
What, in Mexico?
Even in the US.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize all that money, that's why it's so expensive. But I think she picked that, well, to me, because it wasn't the typical, in a lot of other stories, the typical, very poor, desperate, or in a community where if you don't join the gang, you're going to be killed. Here was a middle-class woman who is now in the same position of trying to get out, and to show us it's not just poor people who are trying to come across the border.
And your life comes out on the dime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what she had to go through, imagine what they go through.
Were the sisters Ecuadorian? Is that where they were from?
Well, actually, they were indigenous.
That's true.
You're right.
They didn't consider themselves.
They had a little bit different language.
Indian. Indian.
What did you think of Soledad and Rebecca and their bond with the? Go ahead, Beth.
I think that she was making the point that they wouldn't be leaving their country if there wasn't some really bad reason, that they have to leave. And being that she was middle class and she had the advantage of having money, just think what it's for, what it's like for people that don't have the money. It's even much worse. And so I read this in December of 2020. I didn't know there was any controversy at all. And I felt like I really learned how terrible it is for people to be migrants and trying to get to the United States.
I was shocked even at when she got to the Coyote, and remember she still owed like $300 and some, and boy, he didn't have that money.
Yeah, he was very firm.
She wasn't going, and it was like, whoa, I thought,
Yeah.
you know, he too, I guess he has. I understand he had to pay off people in order for him to get through to the other two, but holy mackerel, I thought he was gonna lighten up on her, but he didn't.
No, he didn't stop when she stopped to take care of her son either.
No.
He gave you the ground rules, and
Yeah.
it's understandable, that's the only way you're gonna survive, but no.
That was the most harrowing blister I've ever read
Wasn't it?
about.
And 2.5 minutes to do it, I'm like, oh my God, it would have taken me at least 15, and they would have been so far gone.
And then the man that broke his leg was like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the, what was his name? Bento?
Bento,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was pretty
That was
good.
sad. That was very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Mhm, mhm.
I don't know, I think people need to lighten up, I think she did a great job. I think she brought it to the forefront, put it on the table so everyone could talk about it.
Right. And I think before too, we probably all really like stereotyped that people were coming here from the other countries because they had no food, they didn't have jobs, they needed to support their families, and
Right.
that's why people migrate
Yeah.
versus,
Sure.
you know, now we have this eye opener of the danger, like it was just too
Yeah.
dangerous
Yeah.
for everyone that was on there.
And we now
Back
have a
in the
new,
money
a
part.
new mess. You've heard the news, right, about the 20,000 plus that have gotten to Colombia, and Colombia is bringing them across, mostly Asia, across over Panama, so they can do that Darien Pass.
Wow.
Does anyone know how she researched all of this, all of the stuff about the trains, and did she interview people? What was her method? Does anyone know? Did she compile the story, make composite characters from interviews, or?
The person.
She just said she did that 5 years of research, so I'm assuming somewhere in there she's talked to people who've experienced.
Is it in the author's note?
Yeah.
It's in the author's note, in the book.
No.
Unfortunately, I don't get that on tape.
Yeah, right. That's why you gotta get full.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm guessing because it sounded so realistic that she talked to people that were illegals that had come that way, so she didn't want to disclose who she talked to. Because I felt it was very realistic.
I don't remember if it was in here or elsewhere, but she did talk about going to the, what do they call it?
Frustration, championing to burn down our cities, criticizing the president of the United States, and even in some cases making threats on the American people if they voted for President Trump.
Is this a news television? TV.
Carol, I've muted you. If you want to chime in at all, just unmute yourself. Feel free to do so anytime. At first, it seemed like somebody was trying to make a point.
Right.
The Casa de Migres, the migrant services and shelters.
Oh,
It sounded
different
like
shelters,
she
different
went,
missions.
yeah, she went to several of those and
Okay.
interviewed some of the people and some of the workers, the volunteers.
That was another thing I learned too, about the frequency of those, and then the way the other people in Mexico were so
The
kind
kindness of
to these
strangers.
migrants.
Yeah.
Have you ever actually been in small villages in Mexico?
No, I've not
Okay,
been
if you
in-
go there, those people are so friendly. I mean, they have, you know, here I try to speak Spanish and they say, let's just speak English. Well, they want to practice their English and I want to talk in.
Yeah. You
Be
can
respectful.
A complete sentence doesn't work. It's usually in phrases. Is what I do, but they're very friendly and they're willing to help you.
So that was interesting.
Oh, yeah. I, in all the years that I went down to Mexico, I never felt uncomfortable at all. But, and drugs were a big deal down there, but it wasn't like, and I wasn't going down there to get drugs, but though that was not something that I ever worried about. So this, was quite harrowing to see this, but this is clearly what some people have to go through.
Right.
And I did like Soledad and her sister. I thought those two were great.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
My husband has to send men to Mexico because he works with dermatonics and they have several plants down there. He can no longer just put them on the plane and send them down. They get a rental car. He now talks to the plant and says, "This is when my man comes in." It's mostly this. I don't think he has any women right now that do this work. And you are to have your driver there, and I need to know his name, and I need to know what he looks like. And you take him and you pick him up and you take him to the hotel. You get him settled. You stay there with them. You pick them up from the hotel and you take them to the plant.
Right. And if you go to a big city, that's what happens. They will.
These isn't even, a lot of these plants aren't even in a big
Yeah,
city.
but they would, well, even in Guadalajara, they will actually kidnap you and ransom you.
Right.
But if you go to these little tiny towns, I mean, this is years ago that I used to go down there. all
Well,
the
this
time.
is today when my husband has to send his.
So how are people buying from homes in these areas? I watch a whole lot of House Hunters International, you know, and they're buying homes around the world and after reading this, I think, how can anyone be going there to just live?
I see my sister-in-law's, one of her sisters and husband have lived down there now for 15 years. And they have no
qualms about it.
No issues whatsoever. They'd rather live in Mexico than the United States. I don't understand that.
Where do they live though? Where?
They live north of Guadalajara, but they don't live in Baja. They live on the main.
In San Jose?
I don't remember the county,
Oh,
but
do they still feel that way?
well, I haven't talked to them for a while,
Okay.
so that's true.
I know
But
that
3 or
I'm
4
really
years ago-
nervous. I'm going back in February. I
Yeah.
didn't go last year because of COVID, but I get a daily newsletter from Puerto Vallarta.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh God, it was like every day they find a body, a beheading, someone cut in 500 pieces,
Oh, geez.
kidnapping
And
people.
see, I don't have any interest in going to Mexico.
Well, I mean, seriously, it was such an eye opener for me. I already knew, because we've been going since 2000. So, I mean, I've seen the subtle changes.
Yeah.
Like we won't rent a car anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've actually got singled out and had to pay to the policeman, a
Right.
little graph to get the driver's license back so we could go on our way. And then we started seeing all of these rear end collisions going down into
Yes.
Puerto Vallarta.
Yes.
And these people just, they see you're in a rental, so they run into the back of your car.
Right, and basically you
how-
don't stick around.
Well, yeah, you don't stick around,
No.
right? So you just know you're gonna be paying the collision.
Well, I tell Cher that you're guilty
You're,
before proven innocent.
yeah.
No, it's
It's
true,
like-
that's a true statement.
Yes, it is.
It's like, I'm like,
And so you're very afraid, because we used to drive down there all the time
uh,
in a camper or just camp. And it was really no issues whatsoever. But I wouldn't go down there now.
Yeah.
For any reason.
last time we were down, we took a bus.
Uh-huh.
Yep, I told Renee this story.
Mhm.
We took a bus because I said, oh, let's try a bus. This will be fun. Well, we ended up in god awful
Oh,
somewhere in
you were
Puerto
on
Vallarta,
you were on a bus
a
that,
public
all the
bus.
people, where they
Yeah.
put all their stuff all over.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
chickens are on their
We were
lap.
just trying to like for fun.
Yeah.
And we ended up downtown and then we're like, oh God, what are we gonna do? So we made our way out to what we recognized as the main highway
Right.
and hailed a cab. And when we got back to our resort, they said, you never hail a cab, never.
Well,
Because we're gonna get kidnapped. And I'm like, oh my God.
or you look at how good the cab is, because I had a
Yeah,
chance
you
to get
do
the
look.
the
Yeah,
tires
for
were
sure.
very involved, and I just said, no, we're
No,
not doing this, 'cause
no.
we're on a mountain road like this.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
So
but
it's an interesting,
it's an interesting
it was very
experience.
interesting, but this was many years ago. I mean, I've been in the Midwest since what? 85, and so it was before 85 that I was sort of Mexico.
It was a lot.
My daughter got married in Honduras.
Uh-huh.
And it was interesting. It varied greatly where you went, but they employed guards even at the grocery stores that stood in front of the grocery
Yeah.
stores and checked out when you went in and when you went out. It had a very militaristic feel
Yeah.
Right.
in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And she got married on Roatan, which was a much easier kind of climate to be. But I remember that they had people there that were guarding things. And one of them showed me, he said, look, and I looked, you see those pinpricks? There were lights in the distance. It was people that were trying to get in, and they had cigarettes. So that if they were in the jungle, that was the only way you could see them, because if they had their cigarettes. So they were there to keep the people from the robbers to not come in and steal stuff while the wedding was happening.
Oh, really?
It's interesting. It's just a situation.
And how long ago was that?
About 10 years.
Then people wonder why they want to leave.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
well,
yeah.
Yeah.
When you were talking about how nice the people were, I loved when they were in that little town and they got in the backyard of that wowoman and she said, hide in their shed, and then she brought the food.
Yeah.
That must be the kind of people.
So that's,
we have.
yeah, we have met, I mean, they always wanted to sell you thing. They always wanted to make money, but they weren't obnoxious. They weren't pushy. And you just sit and chat with them, you know? So, like I say, it
I mean,
was not a
there's
big
good
deal.
humans everywhere.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there are.
Unfortunately, it's overshadowed.
So the author obviously, critics or not, she obviously did research and go to a lot of work to write this book. What do you think she was trying to say?
It's another good question.
Well, I think she was trying to humanize and individualize people who were trying to get into this country. Why? Because, for other people who just sort of characterize them in one big lump as, they're all criminals who are coming here or whatever.
And she says, so I hope to present one of these unique personal stories, a work of fiction, as a way to honor the hundreds of thousands of stories we may never get to hear. And in so doing, I create a pause where the reader may begin to individuate. When we see migrants on the news, we may remember these people are people.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty noble cause, I think.
Yeah.
And she may have changed her idea
have-
while she was writing. Where to go?
What was that, Beth?
I said, to have empathy for
Mhm.
these people.
But are the right people going to read that? I mean, I used to get so angry about people who, I had a lot of students who didn't speak English, and then I had that young man whose English was impeccable. He was better than my English students. And yet we still have people who will say, oh, they don't even know our language, and I'm thinking, well, of course they don't know our language, right? You don't know their language. You don't know their language.
I think like when the German and Irish immigrants would come over, the schools would provide night school for those people, so they could learn English, type of thing. We don't do that here.
Well, and when you go to another country, you don't speak their language. I mean, they can
No,
speak
I
English.
know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really rather pathetic.
We always had ESL in our schools.
Yeah.
We always had ESL in our schools.
Yeah, but like the parents who want to learn English, where do
Yeah.
they go learn English?
They do have night programs for that.
That was, a lot of
Yeah.
volunteer programs.
What I'm most familiar with is the Hmong situation in Appleton.
Yeah.
And most of the parents just opted to not do that. They opted to have their kids be their language. And they stayed separate from the whole thing. That was simply how their culture dealt with it.
Yeah, the other thing is that I taught junior high for 1 year. I taught school for 1 year, but I was 50 something anyway, long story. And had a class of 95% of them were from some Mexico or Central America. And because the principal came, it was my first year teaching, she said, we'd like you to teach a class of children who are at risk of failing math. Now, who should have been teaching that class? But what I found was, and then we had parent conferences, most of them worked more than one job. The children I taught were taking care of their siblings at night. So these parents did not have the wherewithal time to go to a class to learn English, but they wanted so much better for their children.
Yes.
They came dressed in like their Sunday best appearance. It was just heartrending. So I think that's another issue. That's another problem.
Well, the group that Chair and I worked with in Waukegan, most of the kids spoke great English, but they had to translate to their parents.
Exactly.
Always.
Yeah.
And then they didn't make sure they
Yeah,
were
but they were-
translating.
Right. But they were so energetic about having their kids get this education, and be able to get into college. That's
Yes.
what we were trying to do.
And with one parent, I was saying something about, well, you know, it'd really help if he would work on his homework a little more, and he started going, it is child.
Oh, yeah, they're real definite
You know,
about that.
because you're not doing what the teacher said.
Yeah, right.
It was, yeah, it's interesting.
But the book I was thinking is called The Middle of Everywhere, and it is about just immigrants and them acclimating and how we can help, and it's really wonderful. But I remember just that discussion, when the children become the translators for their parents, it up there into family structure, you know, you have to be the translator to take your mother to the doctor, and you should know, you're learning things about your mother. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to learn. You know, just, and the discipline, you know, it's that's just another aspect of acclimating and acculturating that is difficult
But
for.
it's pretty amazing though, that the family unit is really strong.
Yes,
It is.
And I love that.
yes.
But you just made, that's when you just said what the children have to learn. When you think about Luca, remember, there was a point when he said he'd never heard his mother swear, and
Yes.
heard more swearing, and the things that he had to see and learn
Yes.
on that trip. I mean, he is no longer this sweet
Right.
7 or 8-year-old boy anymore. He's a grown man.
And the girls too, you know, so.
Oh,
She
yeah.
kind of skipped over from, they got to Tucson and now they're in, on the East Coast someplace. They're going to high school.
Yeah.
And what they had been through, and then like, I'm just thinking, oh gosh, if they came to my class and they were gonna learn about earth science and rocks, it's like, oh, I don't think they really are interested in this, you know? Jeez.
They know more about life than the rest of it. Even
Yeah.
Luca knows a lot about, I think about,
Grow up
one of our
fast.
kids was at 7 or 8 having to do that same thing. I'm not sure they would quite as well. So,
I wouldn't do well, and I know my son would not have.
yeah.
When are we gonna stop and eat? I'm hungry, I'm tired.
Exactly.
not going.
Right.
Here was my favorite line in the book, though. Lydia is dubious at first, but if you can't trust a librarian, who can?
You need to order that.
Yes,
Positive stuff for the wall.
yes.
That
That was my favorite line, too.
What a great service we have here, you know?
Could you say that again without all the laughter? Because I don't think we on Zoom could catch that.
Okay.
Take your mask off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take
Take
your
your
mask
mask
off.
off,
while
it
you're
might
in.
be better.
So Lydia is dubious at first, but if you can't trust a librarian, who can you trust?
Okay.
That's where they got the library cards.
So how do you feel about how the novel wrapped everything up? Was it satisfying? You got a sense of where these characters were going and what was gonna happen? What?
Well, once they got to Tucson, I really want to know
Yeah.
all the
A little
ins and outs
more.
of how they got over to the other place. I mean, there must have been obstacles there too.
I was
You know?
disappointed in the ending. I thought, no way.
I didn't understand.
Come on, let's fill this in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that
and
would've
she
been
never
another
can't
three
get
or
on
four
a plane without identification. You
Right.
can't get
She
on
never
a train
contacted her
either.
cousin in Denver, her, not her cousin, her
My uncle.
uncle.
An uncle in
It was
Denver.
the girls that had the cousins
Right.
in Maryland. And
Right.
Seems like
They
they ended up in
found the
Maryland.
coyote.
I wondered if they ever, like you said, there was,
I mean,
she
how
could
did they
write
get
another
to
book
these
about
places?
That's right.
their
Yeah.
own life.
Yeah,
that'd probably be the second book, you're right.
Maybe the movie will get to see it.
Right, yeah.
That's
right.
I was kind of surprised, given her relationship with such a prominent person, I mean, a head of cartel, that she couldn't have traded on that knowledge, on that connection with the government agency, you know, to get into a better position, green card or whatever. I guess was she, I mean, at the end of the book, it was unclear whether she was in line for asylum or whether she was illegal or how she got to Maryland. It kind of was unsatisfactory to me. I kind of wanted to know what path she was on there.
I'm guessing she's just illegal, and if you're illegal, you're under the radar. You don't want
right.
anybody to know who you are. You can't, you know,
Right.
you can't.
Right.
I mean, I remember even talking about a dreamer. I heard an interview with him. He was 20 and he couldn't apply for a job because he doesn't have the social security.
Right.
Right, he can't apply for college. I mean,
And they can't get
Yeah.
scholarships.
it's like yours entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these
Um,
days you can't, if you've come in illegally and haven't applied for asylum at the border, it's too late. You can't do it any longer. You used to be able to. You can't anymore.
And does it help to marry an American anymore? But that used to be the.
Well, that's what Marisol did. Marisol did, and did when he died, and then he died.
And then they shipped her off.
Yeah.
So it works if your spouse is there.
Yeah.
apparently, but-
My son is married to someone from Kazakhstan. We'll see.
Oh,
So-
It's a challenge every day.
I mean, she's here illegal.
No, she's legal.
Oh, she's legal.
And it costs a fortune to be
Oh.
legal. All of the steps that you have to go through, and this isn't paying a cartel or anything.
Yeah, right,
It's
right,
just-
right.
It's
Yeah.
just all of what you do in this country, and
Yeah.
$600 now, and another, you
Yeah.
know, it keeps going and going and going.
Did she get her own lawyer?
I don't remember her getting a lawyer yet. Now, she has not chosen to become a citizen. So maybe that puts her,
Does she have a green card?
yes, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So they've told you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's more than half.
Now that we've got 3 kids, let's hope we've got this figured out.
so how long did that whole process take, Karen?
Couple of years,
Mhm.
yeah, easily. And then from up here, you go down to Green Bay for that
Mhm.
process.
So the author mentioned too that her husband was undocumented from Ireland.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that gave her some comparisons? I mean, obviously it's not. Someone from Ireland is afforded some privileges that someone coming from Mexico might not, but
Although, it may have been hard because, when I worked, I used to talk to janitors. Because they were there at night. And so these people came from Romania, Yugoslavia, and all this sort of thing. And you'd ask them, so what did you do in those countries? And
They were
said,
doctors.
They were doctors.
Yeah,
They
all
were
such
engineers,
professionals,
They were
yes.
educators, all this.
Yeah, and not making
They're
any
everything
money
done.
there for
Yeah.
that.
So it was really interesting. They were trying, and they were working multiple jobs as well.
Right.
So, it's really pathetic how our system works. Anyway.
On a somewhat unrelated topic, does anybody in this group know of any efforts to help Afghan refugees?
I have some information. I have your email.
Okay,
I
great,
can
that's
send
good.
it to you.
Good. I mean, are there movements to help people live here, settle here?
There is it's close. Where is it? I know that they came in now. I
Fort
can't think
McCoy.
where.
Yeah, it's close,
Yeah, we
but
got
I mean, I
Fort.
think, but then what's the next step? Can we help sponsor and settle people and get them jobs and housing? Is there any movement to do that in York County?
I have a friend, I have an acquaintance who volunteers with the American Red Cross.
Okay.
And she actually went over to Germany to help process the people coming into the base in Germany. So, I mean, there are avenues if you're interested to get involved. I suppose the Red Cross would be a good place to look, because they're helping relocate people throughout the United States.
In our county, it'd just be almost impossible to find anybody anywhere to live.
I know.
Right,
That's
that's the tricky part
Yeah.
with anything.
We can get them all kinds of jobs.
I know, there would be
Yeah.
jobs.
We need to be in somebody's house, like.
There would be jobs.
All right, we should wrap up. Any last thoughts on American Dirt? Anybody online? Anything you wanted to say that you didn't get in?
Just, what's the book for next month?
Yeah, so my last one is, the publishers have to step up. I think that's what created a lot of this mess with the controversy.
Yeah, I think that it did obviously shed light on some problems.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the author got a lot of the brunt of it, but it's
Yes,
more the
exactly.
publishers and
Exactly.
I think what was kind of nitpicky was the gal from the LA Times that said, well, Lydia saw an ice rink, and this woman was, I forget what
It wasn't
Esmeralda said. She says that wasn't
at all.
at
Right,
all.
right, right.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody like
Yeah,
Lydia in
I'm
life.
just- and I'm just thinking that was really
They were knitting.
Oh, it was just so
Yeah.
trivial and such a waste
Yeah,
of
yeah.
breath. That's why I tried to find other things that she had written.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's
mhm.
certainly not, but she isn't privileged if she's
Well,
Right.
LA Times,
she's making big bucks.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have a lot of sympathy for her.
No.
She could start writing a monthly article about
Sure.
Latinx author.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So if the author were here right now, would we have any questions? Or what questions would we have?
Well, I would ask her a lot about her background, because she evidently she was a bartender in Dublin. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
and I
that's-
like Ireland.
That's gotta be a fun job.
It would be really interesting to ask about her experience living in Ireland.
Mhm. Well, and she did write 2 other novels and 1 nonfiction, and one of the novels was set in Ireland, and people didn't tear her apart for not being Irish.
I was gonna say,
Right.
Just my little aside. Other questions that you'd ask the author if Jeanine Cummins were here?
I'd be
Cummins,
curious
Cummins?
to know if she did start out with the character, you know, that she had Lydia, this middle-class person too, or if once she started doing research, what we had thought too, or, you know, like, was she writing to middle-class America?
Mhm.
Was that the intention to start?
Good question.
Who reads these books?
Mhm, mhm.
I'd like to know if, because of all the heat she's been under, if she has any kernels that she's taken away that might help shine some light on the problem of the migrant life, the passage. You know, she's been under so much and gotten attacked so many different ways. I'm just wondering if anything has surfaced in some sort of a pathway to make things better. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
She's opened eyes, so I would think too that
Yeah.
it could be really great that she did write
Mhm.
to, I mean, now, look, people are taking some passion and would step up, like, how can I help? Like,
Right.
look how lucky we are,
Right.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
you know, and you realize that.
We're gonna have to keep on Oprah, make sure she does a follow-up.
Right, there you
And she can start, you know, the gift of the day, she can give it away to the migrants.
go. So we are meeting in November. We have the date over there on the.
I started today.
You did. Should we talk, maybe, butchering the title here, maybe you should talk to someone. I don't have the short synopsis with me. I don't know if that's readable or not, but it is written by a therapist. It's a therapist, her therapist, and our lives revealed.
So it's nonfiction.
It is nonfiction.
But I read a little of it. It's kind of funny already.
Is it?
Yeah, she puts
It's readable.
She puts
Very,
humor in it.
very.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not.
It's not heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Oh, good to know.
Well, not
So
yet.
completely different from what we just read, nonfiction, a little lighter, but.
150-page book on Afghanistan.
Oh, that would be heavy.
I need to read. I'm almost done. I've got 50
Literally and
pages.
figuratively.
Actually, that's not nearly enough pages to encompass that.
What's the
whole
second
country.
Well, no, it's my second book.
Oh, I was just gonna say, that country is just like.
Well, it's a, read one of those. It's complicated.
So since I won't be here, I just want to know, let's just cut right to the bottom line on that. So is that a self-help book?
No.
Very good.
Are you hoping it is?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, am I gonna read it and come away better in some way? In what way would I do better? Tracy? Ladies, whoever picked that book? Who picked that?
Who picked it? Right. As I started, has anyone read Group?
No.
This is a hot one. I just read this about a month ago.
Mhm.
And this was, I can't remember
Another
whose pick it
therapist,
was.
right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's all about group. Like this woman, she wrote it based on her own life though. And she was so worried after she was going to group, she went to group for years, what her kids would think when they read it. I mean, there's some stuff too that's like, wow, after I did an interview from, you know, I clicked on an interview with the author and I was like, this is real? Wow. Based on her. It's really, really, really good. Really good. Really relatable. I
Do
think.
you have copies?
I have 2 copies left at this point, so first 2 people to the counter can have.
Is it on overdrive?
It is, yes. I'm not sure what the wait list is now, but yes, it is, yes.
They come pretty fast.
Mhm.
Because I read this on every most of my books on overdrive.
I do too, I do too.
What's the difference between overdrive and Libby?
It's the same, they just have Overdrive is their older app, Libby's the newer app, but they've said they're not gonna get rid of the old app. Yeah. All right, thank you all for coming, online people, thank you, thanks for hanging with us, good to see you all.
I had a hard time waiting to a couple of them. But, no, I missed the point.
We need, yeah, and it's nice to have